everyone. Thank you so much for listening to us, for watching us. This is Daddy Sunduri. I'm Eliezer Marte.
I am Eric Martinez.
It's been a great couple of episodes so far, and today there's no exception, and this is going to be amazing. I mean, one of the hardest thing for you, for me, it's just for us as parents, and I'm sure we're not the only ones going through this right now. How do we be the best version of ourselves so we can be the best parents possible?
And we're not referring to liposuction.
No. I mean, but it's good to work out if you need one. I mean, I don't judge. We don't judge. But we are referring to just coping and also finding that balance, right? When I mean coping, I want Omayra Jiménez. She's our guest today. She's a beautiful Omayra Jiménez. I mean, she's just radiante reading, right? She's a life coach. She's actually the founder of Viva La 40. And you know what I like Viva La 40? I was reading about it. It says, finding la chuleria within you, right? Yes, what's chuleria, so people know?
Chuleria means a lot of things, but I heard that when I was growing up. It's like I thought it was only in Puerto Rico that people would use that word, but then after I started using the word, they use it all over Latin America. And chuleria for me means a woman that is full of power, that's secure of herself, also good-looking guy. Ese hombre está chulo, that man looks chulo. It means a lot of things, but more so for me, I heard it a lot when I was growing up. You're so chula. It meant like I was beautiful, I was smart. That was the way of people showing affection towards me. So that's how I express myself.
You know what?
You know what? You do embody that word.
And she does. And Omayra is a mother of two. One of her beautiful daughters is actually here behind the scenes.
Can't see her, but she's beautiful.
She's beautiful, just like you.
Thank you.
But that beauty comes within. And that's what I want to talk about. I said at the beginning, coping, and maybe people say, but what do you mean by coping? So yes, this is all, when we parents, how do we cope with all this idea of being the best version of ourselves so we can portray that to our children?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on this movement. I love it. I think, there's never a right or wrong way to be a parent, but I think the first thing as a parent to cope with everything is you have to work a lot on self-knowledge, self-discovery, get to know yourself. And see what parts of you need healing. I mean, I'm going to talk to you guys from my experience as a parent and what I did. I'm not going to say I was a good or bad parent. Yeah. I did the best I knew how at the moment. And still now, my daughters are grown. Kayla is 22. Kyra is 30. I'm still always working on ways to have a good communication with them, but through being myself, through being real. Because I think back in the days when I was raising them, I was so afraid of showing them my flaws. And because I was so always in fear that how I'm going to show them strength if I'm being weak. And the children nowadays have to see all the faces of a parent, or because you're human and you're not going to be okay every day. So I think the first step to be a good parent while working on yourself, because like I mentioned before, we started, it's like you grow with your children, because no one teaches you. There's no manual that is going to give you
each and every kid is different too.
Yeah, and I have two daughters and they're night and day, but at the end of the day, they're alike in a lot of ways. So for me, the first thing was to work on me, to forgive myself, and to heal that inner child. Because when you don't practice the healing, you kind of overprotect your kids, because you don't want them to get hurt, because you don't want them to go through what you went through. So the first step is to really get to know yourself, see what parts are still bleeding that you have to heal, and go back to your childhood and see what's there that you have to work on and let go. So then understand yourself as a parent and why you do the things you do. Because you can give to your kids what you don't have. And everything starts from within. Everything starts from healing. And then you take it from there. And acceptance, teaching them gratitude, but first to gratitude for you being a parent, because we forget that, being a parent is not easy. So you have to constantly.
It's an ongoing struggle.
Yeah. Look at yourself and be like, you know what? I'm doing this. And it's okay. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing most of the time, but it's getting, I'm getting the work done. And the kids see that. Our children see that. I wish that back in the days, because I went through a lot. I had my first child when I was 21, and I was a child. I didn't know. I came from Puerto Rico. I didn't know. At 21, I don't think you really know what you want at life.
No, you don't. You don't.
So I had my first child, so I felt like I was growing with her. And I was so clueless, but I never wanted to show her what I was going through at the time. So instead of being real, I would snap at times. I would just be exhausted, and I would do things just because I felt it was an obligation, because I was a parent. And this thing that I used to always tell myself was like, they didn't ask for me to come. They didn't ask for them to come to this world. It was my decision. So it's my responsibility to be like this, to be like that. And what I was doing to myself, I was putting so much pressure. And I have to say that I didn't enjoy the process of being a parent, meaning that I was so lost on being perfect that I didn't see a lot of the stuff that was right in front of me, like when they started walking, when they started crawling. So it's so important to be in the present moment and always ask yourself, what do I need right now? What do I need right now so I can be the best version of myself for my daughter, for my children? And I think that's the first step, to really get to know yourself and ask yourself the right questions. That's why journaling is a beautiful thing.
How do you practice? And sorry to interrupt. And I want to get to journaling in a little bit. But you mentioned about healing. What were some of the, tools that you used to heal yourself? And how did you come into that process of, yes, I am healing?
So I was in therapy for 9 years because a lot of the fear that I had. So I used to, I told the story to my daughters recently. I wanted to be a nun once upon a time in my life.
Not that there's anything wrong with the nuns, but yeah.
What was I thinking? But it was the whole, I wanted to feel protected. So when I became a parent, I was so with my youngest, it wasn't so bad. But with the oldest, I was like, I was so strict. I didn't want people to come near her. I mean, she was always with me. That came from not having a father figure. So I'm a child. It's four of us, and I'm the only one that wasn't recognized by my father. So I had that feeling of abandonment, and I never felt protected, even though my mom gave me everything. Mm-hmm. So when I became a parent, I knew that something was wrong with me because I used to protect my daughter too much. And I remember I was working at a daycare, and Mr. Michael was his name. He's like, Omayra, you should really look at yourself and see what part of your childhood you haven't healed, because the way you are with your daughter is not healthy for her, because she would cry all the time. Kyra had to be with me always. I didn't have a life because I was so scared to leave her with anyone. And that's how I knew, through therapy, I knew that there was something there. It was a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. And I went to therapy, and that's how I started healing that inner child and being lovable to that inner child, because I think that's the most important part of being a human being, that you have to look back to your childhood. How was your childhood? What you haven't healed. And I think we all have something from our past, especially from our childhood, that we're still working on. Like if you look at yourself now and you write down, because that's why journaling is such a great tool. Because I practice journaling every morning, and I do like the 15-minute, just write whatever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times I go back and I read, and I'm still healing my inner child, because they're still there. I mean, this process of healing, it doesn't end.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
Yeah, it's ongoing. But the difference is when you have these tools, it's easier for you to see, and it's easier for you to heal and let go. So through journaling, I was able to see all those things that I was holding on to. And one of them was that, I needed affection. I felt like I was not protected because I didn't have my real dad there. I didn't feel, I never had that sense of belonging in my family. So through therapy and writing, I realized, oh my God, this is why I am like this with my daughter. So that's how you know. But it takes time. And I think it's something that you're always really like doing a lot of self-discovery. But the difference between then and now is that I don't beat up myself.
Yeah.
I'm constantly hugging that little child, that little girl, and I dance and I say good, beautiful things to her because we all have that child in us.
Yep.
And you cannot let that person, that little,
And that,
person
yeah.
go.
And that child is always here, and it is a lot of the things that you say resonate with me. I too had, a child when I was 19. I was 19 at the time. I had the same similar experiences with my dad, and so on. And one of the things that I find for me, in my experience as a dad now, and the things that I've learned, is that I had to stop and pause, and really take my time and let go of everything that I knew as a parent, as myself, and just be present in that moment, right? Just be present and just really enjoy that moment, enjoy that time, and stop trying to live for others, live for even in some ways. And it sounds horrible, but not live for myself, but really be there and be present for the child because I was being present for myself too. Now it's interesting. The other day, I was watching this post and it was about inner healing, and it struck me because it said, you have to be the parent to yourself that your parent wasn't, or it was something along those lines. And that's how you can heal, and you can start taking some of those things and start healing yourself, but you be that parent to yourself that you were missing out. And then, and I thought about that, and I thought about my relationship with the kids, and how I parent them, and so on. And I changed and tweaked a few things, which surprisingly weren't in my parenting strategies. It was mostly with my interactions with others, where I had to let go of some relationships and how they made me feel, because if they were affecting how I was present in my relationship, in my home, and present with like the kids and so on. But it had a lot to do with the inner healing too, where you're kind of sitting there like, no, you know what? You want forgiveness from your parents. You want things to be different, but guess what? They're not.
Exactly.
But only you can, do a course correction and really treat yourself differently. But it starts with you trying to heal yourself. And the only way, and I do agree with that, the only way you can do that really is by you being that parent to that child, that's that inner child that you have. And then then it brings us to that. How does the journaling work, and what other strategies can one implement to
Well, journaling is the way. There's a lot of definitions, but my definition that has worked for me is self-expression. Is to be able to express, but you're not going to tell the world. It's a safe place, right? Because it's only you and that paper. Because you can use paper, you can use a book, a notebook, a journal. I like to have journals. That's the way That's my definition. There's other ways. Therapy. I believe a lot in therapy. I believe that. It's always good to talk to someone that it's not part of your circle, because in our culture, to show yourself, like people tell you, you don't be afraid to show your true self. But when you go, at least from my experience, when I started talking to people what I was going through,
People are judging you.
judging me.
Yeah.
And, through that whole depression and everything that I was going through, I fell into addiction. So when I started talking about it, I remember the first time I expressed it to a friend, her feedback was horrible, and I got traumatized. And I was like, I can never talk about this ever again. So through therapy, I couldn't talk the first few months. So they made me write. And I remember the therapist, he said, just express yourself. Just let everything out. If you don't want to talk to me, just let yourself go. Lose yourself in that book, in that journal. And that's a way therapy, also spending time with yourself in silence. I think silence is like, it was hard for me at the beginning to just practice mindfulness. And mindfulness, people are confused with that too. People think that it's just to leave your brain in blank. And no, it's just to be with yourself, to just breathe. And whatever story you're telling yourself, if it's the negative one at the moment, just switch it. Do whatever it takes, but also that story you're telling yourself has a lot to do with who you're going to be as a parent.
Yes.
you know. So you have to change that story you're telling yourself. And how do you do that? Because how are you going to listen to yourself? Through silence. So journaling, therapy, silence, being around people that really love you and care for you, and just practice gratitude. You know, sometimes we think that we don't have things to be grateful for, and you'll be surprised. So one of the things that I still do till this day, and connecting with your spirituality, that's very important, and it has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with whatever you believe in that brings you peace. To me, is God, and I love the life of Jesus. So I can relate a lot to that. And these are my tools, and I believe firmly in them because they really work. So I think this is the way I've been able to heal, and I've been able to help other women and people who I work with too, because they've seen the before and after. And I think putting myself out there and looking for the right help has helped me today to be the parent that I am.
And that's, sorry to cut you there, but when we first started talking earlier, you said, I'm the best mother now because I am the best that I am myself. Now, in other words, you say you're the best parent now because you're at your best.
Yes,
I mean, I'm not going to say your age unless you want to.
I'm 51. I'm 51.
But
You look amazing.
You look
Yeah.
amazing,
Thank
but because
you.
you said it. You said, now that I'm 51, I wanted to ask permission before revealing your age.
Of course,
Now
I'm
that I'm
51 and
51,
There you go. You should be proud.
I mean, look at this beautiful woman.
Oh, thank you.
But
thank
but
you.
you
be
did
proud.
say, now that I'm 51, I am the best mother to my daughters because I am at my best.
Yes, because you can give them, you can give anyone what you don't have. And I think now in my life, because I've been through all these processes, and I know people are ashamed to talk about, I've been to a psychiatrist, I've been to therapy. I was in therapy for 9 years. I'm still in therapy. I mean, there's a different type of therapy, but I'm at my best now, and I can really give to my daughters what I have. Coming here, I was having a conversation with my daughter about, her boyfriend, school, things she wants to do. With my oldest, now she's a parent. I talk to her about parent, and I've learned to respect my daughters. Before I wanted things to be my way. It has to, because as parents, we think.
I think that's very important to touch on.
Yes, because as parents, we're like, we think we know best. No, we don't know best.
That's something that I'm working on.
Yeah?
Because
That's why I'm highlighting it. We have to.
I mean, I'm glad we're having these conversations because, it took you time to get to the point, but the reason we're doing this is because I'm learning from these conversations myself. I mean, Ethan is only 6. He just turned 6, but
Yesterday.
And you have a long way to go?
I know, but even now I'm like, no, this has to go like this. And at times I'm like, no, he's only 6, and I'm sure there's going to be other, jumps, loops and bumps along the road, and it doesn't have to be your way. Let's look at it from his point of view.
Exactly. You have to respect their feelings, because that's the way they're going to build up their own identity. So as parents, we think, in our Latin culture, it's like, we think we know it all because we don't want them to repeat the story. But why you're so scared if they repeat the story?
And then most way, we had this conversation before too, is that we're not going to be around there at all times. Like, they will be in the real world, which is very harsh. It's very troubling, especially in these times that we live in today. And it's not, they'll have their ups and downs, but they have to be prepared to identify, assess, and make their own, make their own decisions and live with those decisions, and really be able to maneuver around this thing we call life, and the world, and not the way that we do. I think as a parent, what's most important for me is to be able to pass on the skills. I remember when I was younger, I used to, even like as far as like spirituality goes, it was like, oh, they were like, I wish, I have to pray for this, and I remember I used to think this way as a kid. I'm like, well, I don't want to pray for that. I want to pray for it if it does get there. I know that I'm there that day. And then someone told me, no, you pray for you pray for being able to identify the opportunity, right? And it's stuff like that. Even with your kids, give them the tools that they need. Even when we have these things, when you go into therapy, you want to have these tools because it is an ongoing struggle, yes. But you're always constantly working on yourself because you're constantly evolving.
Exactly.
Your kids are evolving. Life is evolving. Then there's grandkids in the mix. There's age that's in the mix. There's things there's health. Things are always changing. And I think it's great that we're always that we're always working on ourselves. We should be working on ourselves.
Yeah.
I find it, all too often that I think what hurts us most, especially as a Latin man and Latin women too, is that we get so distracted by influence, outside influence. And that's why I love the fact that you said, it took me a while to learn how to live in silence. And for me, it was by accident. It was like, we were talking about this earlier before we started this episode. It was like, when I come home after work, I don't want to answer no calls.
And setting up boundaries too.
I don't want to do anything. And I learned to just live in silence when I'm home, because I don't want, but through that, I've learned to analyze situations. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do things here, but also shut things off, because that outside influence, when you have these triggers, they do influence your life, your perception, your feelings, and you carry that on to yourself. It translates to shame. It translates to different self-doubt, and that you carry that on to your kids as well. And you also, listen, I've learned that, I've had friends in the past who, like, I would talk about, I can't talk to you because I'm going to carry this feeling all day.
Yeah.
All day I'm gonna be
energy is a big thing.
like all day I'm going to be very upset for something that has nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
So it's like,
So that's-
you need to be able to identify these triggers and so on, but you know what you can and cannot handle. You know what you can and cannot do. But also, your life is important. And your kid's life, you have to invest in, more importantly, you, so that you can be there for them as well. So,
And that goes with setting up boundaries, right? You have to learn how to say no, how to stop, and even at home, you need to set up boundaries even with your children.
Yes, so that's where the structure comes. So as a parent, you need affection is the number one. The number two is a sense of belonging, and the third is structure, and that's when you set the boundaries. But you also, because some kids don't understand. Sometimes we want to be, because we think we know it all. We want to be a certain way. We want them to be. So that's when we become too strict. And another thing I would say, as a parent, you have to. This is why it's important not to be so strict. And when I say structure, not to be so.
but can you
black
say
and
that
white.
again? Not to be so strict.
I
Not
know,
to be
I
so-
know. I think
Not
this
to
is
be
this
so
is-
black and
this is
white.
an
You have
episode
to-
for me.
You know what? My daughters used to be scared to talk to me at one point.
He thinks that Ethan. Well, I think I
He is very strict. I tell him, like, you have to remember that he's only 5. Now he said, like, he's only 5. Like, you're acting like he's 20 or something. Like, his comprehension level is not. He lives in a different world. Like, you're thinking like he's
it's
5.
a learning process.
Yeah, but that was me. I thought, but you'll learn once you become conscious. So having this conversation now, you're probably, it's like everything is lighting up.
Yeah, everything's like, oh, that's me. I do this. I gotta work on this. I gotta do this better.
So now
I'm gonna start writing. I'm gonna start
writing.
journaling.
I'm telling you, journaling, and still to today, because my life is not perfect. Parenting is never perfect.
Never.
I still have my little issues with my daughter. There's still things that I'm like, oh my God. But I've learned to let them, because there's a world out there that even if you try to protect them so much,
Yep.
you're only going to protect them while they're with you.
That is very
Exactly.
While they're
Yeah.
out there, eventually they're going to go out. So you have to also talk to them about the real world. Social media, I always tell my daughters, social media is a beautiful thing.
But it's not the real
But
world.
it's not the real world, and it can really mess up your kid's brain if you don't talk to them and
Yes.
tell them. And because they start comparing themselves. I see it all the time. So I coach young girls. And every time that we have conversations, that's all I hear. Like, oh, I'm in social media, and why she looks like this. I want to look like her. Why they always tell me, I wish you were my mom. And I'm like, but I'm not, because you have your mother. So you always have to really, this is why it's important to be real with your kids. Because we try to protect them, and it's like putting a Band-Aid. Like, if they fall, oh, you're going to be okay. Let me put the Band-Aid and that's it. It's going to heal. No, be real with them. This is what's happening. And I'm a firm believer not to be on social media so much.
Yes.
But if there's things going on, it's good to talk to your kids. Look, this is this news that I heard. I want to talk to you about it. So they can, because you have to create awareness.
Yes,
Because
100%.
there's a lot of times, there's a lot of depression going on, right? Now, if you see these big celebrities, young celebrities, that they're into drugs or committing suicide, it's because no one is there to guide them. They don't know any better. So as a parent, we're not going to know it all. But if we sit with them, at least we know we're creating some type of awareness.
No, and even with the awareness, it goes back to giving them that toolbox
Exactly.
of creating, like, make sure that they can be opinionated. That's when I say opinionated, that they can look at something and look at it from like an abstract point of view, or just say, okay, question it, and not fall into that whole, easily susceptible to what I call like a cult mentality, or, like whatever the case may be. But a lot of kids nowadays, if you tell them it's green and they see that it's clearly blue, they told them it was green, so it's green. Like they won't even think to challenge it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great piece of advice. It's something that I think I would definitely like to incorporate that in, current events. Don't shield your kids from the truth. That's number one. But also don't shield. It's good to have a conversation with them on current events. And I remember, that's one thing that, as Latin parents did without knowing, we used to sit there and watch the news.
Yeah. And they'll be like, no.
Like, why did he hit her? Because, So that's actually, we actually do carry that on, but I think that's a great thing for.
But sometimes we're not truthful as parents. We're not truthful.
We try to
protect them,
Yeah.
but by protecting them, I don't think we're doing any good, because we're not preparing them to go out there and face reality.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you a question. What are some of the challenges? Well, not challenges. What are some of the things that our beautiful KKs question you on now? Or criticize you?
So I don't think nowadays my daughters don't question
Outside of
me.
not answering your phone.
Well, they'll question me about boyfriends and stuff, But I think now I think I'm the one that questions them a lot more. Like I get in the car with them and I talk to them a lot and I start the conversations. So I think they still see me as a mom. Mm-hmm. So they don't ask me so much, but I do ask them. So that's another tip. Like, don't wait for them to ask you. You ask them and ask them, how do you feel about that? What do you want? As parents, we forget to ask them, what do you want? And we have to always encourage them to self-value what they deserve, because they forget. Everything starts from home.
We forget. Yeah, we forget.
Yeah, so
we forget what do we want as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So first it starts. See, the reason I can have these conversations with my daughters is because now I know. I tell you, I feel so free now. Like sitting here and having this conversation with you guys. Before it wasn't so like. I feel free. I feel at my best because it's been years of self-discovery, and going back. Like sometimes I sit down and I go back. And I see who they are now, what they've become. And I'm like, even though it wasn't perfect back then, wow, but they're doing so well. Mm-hmm. We think we did so bad, but when you sit, like if you guys would sit today, right, after this is over, and you look at your kids and look back how you started and where they are today and where you guys are as a couple, as a human being right now, you'll be like, wow, I didn't did that bad. I thought I did, but I'm doing great. And now I'm going to do better. You have to always keep in mind that you're doing the best you can.
With what you have.
Yeah.
And that's what our parents did.
We always say that our parents are the best with what they have.
Yeah.
And it's funny. This is one thing I always tell myself, like where I am now with this new era of parenting. It's like, this is my new version of self after my self-starvation, right? Of my own self, where it was like that, where I was stepping on myself. And, as you said, feeling free. I think that should be the goal for most people, if not for everyone, because it's a very liberating feeling when you're just kind of like, you know what? I'm not saying I know my purpose. What I'm saying is that I am happy to be here. I'm happy with myself. I think that I am content with what I'm doing, and I'll keep trying every single day to keep pushing forward, but I'm not being held back by anyone else, more importantly, by myself. And I think that's a true state of happiness. Mm-hmm. That when people say, what is true, like what is the true meaning of happiness? I think you're closer to it, because you are liberated. Yeah. And being liberated is not being liberated by external factors. Really is, we are our number one, dungeon cell and everything else you can really call it. So when you go from a period of self, your self starvation to go from self fulfillment, I think it's a beautiful thing. So
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful thing. I think everyone should give themselves the opportunity to do. I tell people, the same way you like to go on vacation, and that should be the same way you should love doing that trip from the mind to your heart. That's something that should be your priority. In Spanish, it sounds better, but it's like I remember when I used to go on vacation, and we've traveled.
But how do you say it in Spanish?
Hacer ese viaje de la mente al corazón.
Yeah, that's cute. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I used to go on vacation, and I remember the first time I went to Europe, and I came back, and even though I thought it was amazing, I really didn't enjoy that trip at all. And I started writing, and I realized there was something still there. So even if you go away and you still haven't forgiven yourself for whatever reason, you're not going to enjoy anything. And if you don't practice forgiveness, if you don't practice acceptance and gratitude, you're going to be killing yourself trying to be the best parent, the best couple, the best, even at work. You're always going to feel like you didn't do good enough. But once you start taking like that journey of acceptance, forgiveness, and just giving yourself the opportunity to let go of everything that's there, then you really start living life. Then you start being a good parent. Then you start being a good partner. Everything changes because everything comes from the inside out. And, you were talking about happiness. For me, the definition of happiness is being able to be thankful for everything, for the good and the bad, a lot or very little or nothing.
I like that.
Beautiful. Omayra, I want to usually close this up with three things, right? That if you can tell a parent that right now it's working hard to be the best,
Struggling parent or
just a parent that wants to be the best that he or she can. What are those three things that you want them to know that can help them achieve that?
First, to believe in themselves. 2, to give themselves the opportunity to practice silence and see what they're not letting go of so they can be the best version of themselves. And 3, to just be themselves and stay around the correct people, because that has a lot to do with us being a good parent.
Omayra, thank you so much for your time.
Love that.
With that being said, if we want to follow you on social media, just share your social media profiles with us so people can go ahead and Viva la 40.
Sure, Viva la 40, and also my webpage, omayrajimenez.com. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you for having
You're
me.
awesome,
Thank
too.
you for being here.
Welcome anytime.
It was a beautiful episode. We want to hear from you as well at home, whether you're watching us, you're listening to us. What are you doing as a parent to be the best version of yourself? What are you working on? Make sure you just share anything you want to share with us. Daddy's on Duty, Eliezer Marte, Eric Martinez, those are our social media platforms. Thank you so much for listening to us or watching us.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Hasta la próxima. Next time.